This is Bill Osmond, City Manager in Douglasville. I think all of us are aware that we face a very serious situation with the drought. We intend to address that today, talking with WSA Executive Director Pete Frost. I hope you will join me for this interesting and informative On the Agenda.
So, what happens to the stuff I put in the recycle bin anyway? So you see, recycling really does make a difference. Will you put this in the recycle bin for Mommy?
Yeah.
Well, thanks for joining me today for another edition of On the Agenda. The Douglasville-Douglas County Water and Sewer Authority was established in 1985, and in my opinion it has a record of being one of the very best water and sewer authorities in the South, even in the nation, I would say. And in recent years, in addition to providing excellent water services and sewer services in Douglasville and Douglas County, it's tackled the problem of stormwater management, surface runoff. But today, at this point in time, WSA probably has its most complex and difficult challenge, and that's dealing with the drought that has gripped Douglasville and indeed all of Georgia. And it doesn't appear that there's any easy man-made solution to the current situation. I think that unless we have a very significant amount of rainfall over the next several weeks, as we look ahead into 2008, we may be somewhat like the old fellow who said, "You haven't seen anything yet." Today we intend to talk about this with Pete Frost, who's the Executive Director of the Douglasville-Douglas County Water and Sewer Authority. But let me just point out that in the mid-1980s, City of Douglasville had a relatively small water and sewer department. The county had a small water department, really didn't have a service that went countywide. County didn't have a sewer department. And the leaders of Douglasville-Douglas County at that time felt like what they needed was to create an authority which would provide a funding mechanism, and that it needed to be a city-county operation to meet really all the needs that we had in Douglasville-Douglas County as growth was beginning to come our way from Atlanta. And so the leadership in Douglasville-Douglas County with the legislators were able to get legislation approved in 1985, and the WSA was established. The mayor of the city of Douglasville, the board of commissioners chairman, serve on the WSA board along with some private citizens. And actually, Douglasville and Douglas County have equal footing in how the WSA board is constituted. You can live anywhere inside Douglas County, including inside the city of Douglasville or the Douglas County portion of Austell and Villa Rica, as well as in the unincorporated area. And the way the process works is that on one time the county Board of Commissioners will screen, select 3 names, submit those to the city, and the city will select the board member. The next time around, the process will be just reversed. And if one government submitted 3 names and none were selected, then it rotates to the other government to start the process. And actually, this has worked very effectively since WSA was created and giving a good representation countywide on WSA board. The WSA board is a policy-making board, and in more than 27 years, it has adopted a lot of policies and made a lot of decisions on water services and sewer services in Douglasville and Douglas County, where the lines would be placed, what the capacity would be. It makes a number of decisions, has made a number of decisions on stormwater management, and now is having to make decisions dealing with the drought. The WSA board also selects the executive director, and as many of you know, that person is Pete Frost. Pete is the only executive director the WSA has ever had. He became the director in 1985, was the first employee of WSA, and has been here since that time, built the staff up as well as this organization. And when we come back in a minute, I'm going to be talking with Pete Frost about WSA, but with our focus today being on the situation with the drought conditions in Douglasville, Douglas County. So in just a moment, we will return to continue this edition of On the Agenda. The Douglasville City Council meets at City Hall on the first and third Monday nights in each month at 7:30 p.m. We have a legislative work session on the preceding Thursday nights at 7:30 p.m. at City Hall. Those meetings, of course, are open to the public, and you're welcome. We would welcome you to come to any of those meetings. There will be an opportunity at each meeting for citizen comments. Now, if you're unable to come to those meetings, but you want to know what's going on, you will be able to see the key parts of those meetings on City TV. Welcome back to this edition of On the Agenda. And as I mentioned earlier, our special guest today is Pete Frost, the Executive Director of the Douglasville, Douglas County Water and Sewer Authority, the WSA. Pete, delighted to have you with us.
Thanks for having me.
Well, Pete, you've been the Executive Director of WSA from the time that it was started. So in its entire history, dating back to 1985, you're the only Executive Director that the WSA has had. But I know it must have been a great challenge for you to leave Akron, Ohio back in the mid-'80s to come to Douglasville, Georgia, where there was virtually no facilities, and to start what I believe has become one of the nation's best water and sewer authorities. So tell me how you decided to accept this position and come all the way down to Georgia.
Well, first of all, thank you for the compliment. I do appreciate it. At the time when I was in Akron, Ohio, and that was, I worked for Summit County government from 1973 through 1985. And I was the county administrator for a period of time, and Summit County is a population of about 450,000 people at that time. The form of government changed, and my position became elected, and we went to a city council mayor form of government. My position became elected, so I obviously couldn't do that anymore. And but the person who was elected appointed me to head up the then Environmental Services Department, which was water and sewer. I was also the liaison between the administration and council. And so I did that job for about 6 years and decided I wanted a change, started looking around, and lo and behold, the Douglasville, Douglas County Water and Sewer Authority was looking for an executive director. So I applied, did a couple interviews, and came down here.
Well, great. We're delighted to have you in Georgia. And of course, today, WSA is a very sizable organization, but back in 1985, of course, when Mr. Frost joined this organization, he was the one man on the staff. The city of Douglasville back in the mid-'80s had a very small water department, an even smaller sewer department. The county had a small water department, and so when you came in, you had to start almost from zero. And now, of course, you have a large operation that's recognized throughout this country. Give us a few details in terms of WSA's status today in terms of the number of employees, the value of the infrastructure we have here, and so forth.
Okay. Well, first of all, I would have to say it was definitely a challenge being the first employee, but it provided a lot of opportunity. You know, it was like starting your own business with someone else's money. You know, and it was a challenge. We started off, as you know, Bill. You were here as a consultant with the city at the time, and we started off with just the city employees and the county operational employees, and grew from there. And we started off with about 50-some employees. We've grown since that time to just under 200. But perhaps the more telling tale is that of the infrastructure. When we combined the city and the county systems back in December of 1985, we started with $22 million worth of assets. Our latest financial statements show that we're just under $1 billion, or half $1 billion worth of assets. So we've had quite a bit of growth. Some of it funded by debt, but we have grown. We've gone from a small system into a large system. In fact, we're characterized by nationally as a large system. It's hard to believe that Douglas County and Douglasville are considered large, but by national standards, we are.
Right. Well, I know that there's been an outstanding record that's been made over the past few years, and as you say, when you came in as a one person, and of course I well remember when Pete came in as that one person, he mentioned that I was working as a consultant for the city of Douglasville. I was here part of the time, and I showed up at the little office that the city had provided for me in a City Hall annex down on Spring Street, and found out I had been evicted, sent down to the basement, because they'd hired this fellow Pete Frost and said he's going to be creating the Water and Sewer Authority here. But you know, I've forgiven you for sending me down to the basement back 27 years ago, Pete. And of course, what you did over those next several months, or even a few years, in putting your staff together. And I know that as we look back from 2007, that WSA has won a lot of awards. Can you just tell us some of the ones that of which you're the most proud?
Sure. Well, you know, first of all, let me just say that anytime you win awards, it's a group effort, and it starts at the top with the board of directors. You know, when I first came to the Water and Sewer Authority, one of their charges to me was to put Douglasville and Douglas County on a map on a positive basis. The county at the time was under a consent order. The city was also had some problems with their wastewater treatment facilities, and so the charge was not only get us out of this problem that we're in, but let's do it as well as we can. And my board of directors has created an environment through the years where we can be successful. So that's the first thing I have to say. And we have a lot of dedicated employees. I mean, we now have graduate chemists or graduate biologists, professional engineers, accountants, you name it. We've probably got that discipline on staff, attorneys on staff. So with bringing those professional people in and also all the certified operators and maintenance folks that we have been fortunate enough to compete and win some national awards. I would have to tell you this, and this is perhaps the thing I'm most proud of, is that we have been recognized by US EPA 3 times in the past 15 years as having the best operated wastewater treatment facilities in the country. To the best of my knowledge, we are the only system that has received that recognition 3 times.
Right.
You know, we have a little fun with our peers on the best tasting water. We've been fortunate enough to win that 2 or 3 times in the last 10 years. So we do strive to be the best, and it's just nice. It's nice from our perspective to know that our peers recognize that we are one of the best. And I think from the consumer standpoint, it lets them know that we're doing more than just trying to get by, that we are trying to give them, the best quality drinking water we can. They get to see those awards in the newspaper, and hopefully they realize that we are doing better than just the minimum.
That's great. Of course, a few years ago, in addition to the water services and the sewer services that WSA provides, you entered into an intergovernmental agreement with the City of Douglasville, also with Douglas County for stormwater management, dealing with surface water. And at some point in the near future, on another edition of On the Agenda, I want you to come back, and I'd like for us to talk about stormwater management and talk in more detail about some of the things in water services and sewer services. But today what I want us to really focus on is probably the most complex and difficult problem that WSA has ever faced, and it's a unique problem, of course, in our community, in Metro Atlanta, and in the state of Georgia. And what I'm talking about, of course, is the drought. Basically, we're running out of water. Pete, give us your perspective on this unprecedented problem that we have.
Okay. Well, first let me say that one of the things that we have done for really the last 20 years is to track how much water is coming into our reservoir and how much we are releasing out of our reservoir. Our worst years to date was the drought of 2000. That's when our reservoir dropped to about 7 feet below its normal pool elevation. What we started seeing this year as we were monitoring our flows was that that water stopped going over our dam 3 months earlier than it did in 2000. And so in June, I spoke to my board about implementing water restrictions. Effective July 1st, what the board did was place a restriction on all outdoor watering, trying to be proactive in the event that we did have a major water shortage. Right. That has proven to be quite insightful. We have been conserving water for quite some time, with the cooperation of our customers for the most part. And our consumption is down about 20 to 25%, what it historically has been. And we continue to monitor as we go along. Today, for example, we are at a new record low, and every day that passes, we're at a new record low in our reservoir. We're down about 110 inches, so we're looking at 9.5 feet, something like that, which is, we've never been at that level. We have about a month and a half before we'll be at the lowest gate in our withdrawal station on Dog River. And we are now buying quite a bit of water from the Cobb Marietta water system. We are producing some of our own water, and we are aggressively finding violators. The thing about the water restrictions is we have about 42,000 customers. 41,900 of them are complying, and we have about 100 that aren't. And people drive by every day and see some of these folks illegally watering their yards or whatever. And it upsets them, and I understand. You're trying to follow the regulations, and your next door neighbor isn't, and it's upsetting. So we have taken some very aggressive measures to deal with that. Likewise, we do have some sympathy for those people that put in a lot of landscaping, and they don't want to lose that landscaping. We've had people come to our board meetings and ask for some relief, but the reality is we have to set priorities on this very limited resource. And our priorities are obviously human health and safety. Landscaping is a secondary priority as far as we're concerned, and that's the reason we're doing what we're doing today.
Right. And I think that WSA certainly has taken the needed step of being very aggressive in dealing with this monumental problem. And I know those of you watching this program, in addition to what Mr. Frost is saying to you, you may have other information that you wish to obtain about what you can do while this drought is continuing, and what are some of the things you need to be sure not to do. If any of our viewers wish to get additional information, how might they do that?
Well, first of all, they can check our website, which is ddcwsa.com, and they can also contact our Public Relations Coordinator, Ms. Barbara Williams, and she'll be able to give them additional information on ways to conserve.
Right. Obviously, we need rain. and a lot of it. And basically the problem we're dealing with is something that man simply can't handle. I know a lot of people individually and in their churches are praying for rain. I know I am. But until the rains come and the lakes begin to refill, we've got a potential crisis. From your perspective, I want to pose two questions to you. And you touched on this a minute ago a little bit, but what is our countdown time? In other words, since we're using water at a particular rate and our intake is less than our outflow, both with the Dog River and with Cobb County, how long can we keep this up? And you had indicated about, I think about 60 or 70 days, but if you would talk a little bit more about that. And the second, what can an individual do to try to stretch out the time that we would have this available water? And then what else is WSA looking at to try to buy some time for us until hopefully the rains come?
Okay. Well, let me address the first question. How much more time do we have? Well, a lot of that depends on climatic conditions, of course. And we are buying quite a bit of water from the Cobb Marietta water system, and a lot of it depends on lake levels in Altoona. They get their water out of Altoona and the Chattahoochee River. So assuming that we don't receive any rain and we're still allowed to buy water from the Cobb Marietta system, and we continue to draw out of Dog River and also Bear Creek, we've got about 6 months of water supply left. If anything changes, certainly if we can't continue to buy water from the Cobb Marietta system, that time frame will shorten. And I don't see that we're any different really than the rest of Metro Atlanta. Right. It's just that our bucket or our reservoir is smaller and it's more susceptible to drought, but it's also more it refills quicker because again it's a smaller reservoir. So it's a bit of a double-edged sword. You know, back in 2000 when we did receive those winter rains, our reservoir recovered in about 10 days. But in order for that to happen this time, we're going to need, unfortunately, a tropical storm, which, is a blessing on the water side, but then we have to start dealing with the stormwater complaints, So it's kind of a darned if you do and darned if you don't scenario. But certainly we'd put up with those stormwater complaints if we could get the water.
Right.
Your second point is how can people help us stretch this time frame, and that is just being smart, doing the right thing, following our regulations, following the water restriction requirements, reporting violators. And that I will say this, that we're getting a lot of call from neighbors who are saying, my neighbor at such and such an address is watering at night or watering illegally, and we're tracking those and trying to catch those folks. So people are helping in that regard. Likewise, just recognize that it's a very serious situation. If don't take 3 showers a day if one will do. Just be smart, be reasonable with the water because it's a limited resource.
Right. And I know with the city, and I think also with the county as a law enforcement officers, animal patrol, that we've asked them to be aware to see if they see any illegal watering, and as we have our code enforcement and other people out, we certainly are doing the same as we try to work with WSA on dealing with this.
If I could just interject something, and I do want to say this, that we are getting a lot of cooperation from the city police department, the sheriff's office. We have our own employees that are out there during the day, meter readers, maintenance folks. We're getting reports from bus drivers with the school system. We're getting reports from everyone to try and help, and we do appreciate that very much.
Right. We both have mentioned Cobb County. If you would just address for us how WSA works with other governments on concerning water resources in good times as well as bad times, and how also the local governments work on a regional level and how you work with the state.
Okay. Well, one of the things that every system wants to be is interconnected with others. We're interconnected with the Cobb Marietta system, the Cobb County system. We supply water to the city of Villa Rica, so we're interconnected with their system. And we are interconnected with Carroll County's water authority. We used to supply them water. So periodically, if one of the systems gets in trouble or has an emergency, generally the other systems will help. We've helped Carroll County on several occasions. If we need their help, I feel very confident that they would try and help us. Cobb is the kind of the big boy on the block. They are the largest water producer in the state. They have 13 customers. They have Gwinnett County, Cherokee County, Douglas County, Paulding County. They're the wholesaler, and we have used them for more than 20 years. We are using them this year as well, to a greater extent than we have in the past. So we all try and cooperate in times of need, and you know, they can be of more of assistance to us than we can to them because they're a bigger system. But if they had a problem in our area or an area that we could help them with, we would certainly do that. As far as a bigger picture, looking at Metro Atlanta, it's the same around all of Metro Atlanta. We have regular meetings. We're all part of the Metropolitan North Georgia Water Planning District. We all receive briefings from the state on lake levels, whether it's Altoona, Lanier, Walter F. George, and all the way on down to Apalachicola Bay. So we're all being advised of the critical nature of this drought, and we're all banding together to try and help each other.
Right. Well, I know the city of Douglasville and its elected officials that we're interested in doing what we need to do to try to minimize the impact of the drought, and certainly want to work with WSA on this. In fact, a few weeks ago, the city council made a change on the requirements that we have for developers when they finish new construction, is that we had the requirement that there had to be sodding in the front yard. And we've suspended that until the drought conditions terminate, because even at that point, you could water for 30 days after you had installed the sod. If you couldn't water after that, it just meant the grass lasted for a few weeks and then died. So what we have said to developers is we will not require you to have to put in sod at this time. You will have to at some time in the future. But that's an example of what we have done. And what I would say, Pete, as we close, as you have other recommendations that you want to make to the mayor and city council and to myself, staff, we certainly would like to receive them. But just as we conclude, any concluding remarks that you would like to say to our viewers? Just again, we appreciate everybody's cooperation with the watering restrictions. And if you see violators, please give us a call, and we'll try and catch them in the act, so to speak, and we'll deal with it accordingly. Great. Well, it's been great to have you with us. Thank you. And glad to have Pete Frost with us today on the agenda.
Now available at the Douglasville Welcome Center, the 2007 Downtown Keepsake. This year's Keepsake is a beautiful depiction of the Farmers and Merchants Bank building at the corner of Broad and Campbellton Streets. Don't miss this opportunity to own your piece of historic downtown Douglasville. This year's Downtown Keepsake is available now at the Douglasville Welcome Center, 6694 Broad Street, next to O'Neill Plaza.
City TV, bringing Douglasville and Douglas County a new look at government TV. With Ask the Mayor, on the agenda, the police report, the lineup, and city council meeting broadcasts. City TV, programming for our citizens.
Well, thank you for joining us today, and I hope you will join me in keeping in mind that we do need to conserve water. It's very important, so think about the things that you can do to make sure that our water supply lasts until we can have the rains to replenish our reservoirs. This is Bill Osmond with another episode of On the Agenda.